Hello and welcome to Drawn Out Conversations, the series where I get a chance to talk to engineering leaders from other organizations about their architecture and how they have scaled and grown their business. Today I'm joined by Avinash Gangadharan, CTO of Turo. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Rob. It's a pleasure.
Just before we start to dive into architecture, for those who aren't super familiar with Turo, can you tell us just a little bit about the problem that you're solving?
Yeah, so Turo is the largest P2P car sharing marketplace. Our mission is to put 1.5 billion cars to better use. And what we do is give our guests an access to a car that they want, at the place that they want, and at the price that they want, anywhere in the world. That's our mission, and that's what we try to do. So connecting, two individuals and an asset on the platform is what we primarily do, basically.
Fantastic. So I would think that for a lot of people, thinking about that process that you just described, connecting two people basically through a platform, is a relatively straightforward proposition. Mm-hmm. So can you tell me a little bit about maybe one of the most surprising parts of the platform for you, or one of the most surprising problems that you've had to solve technically?
So for any marketplace, there are four fundamental things that I guess are the pillars for the marketplace, that makes it succeed. Number one is selection. The next one is, I think, trust. It is trust. You need to build the trust in the marketplace. Value, you need to have assets in the marketplace, available at the right value that's attractive for both the parties. And fourth, you need convenience. So at the heart of all of it, this is what we do. We provide selection that no one else does. Yeah. We have more than 800 makes and model. No one else in the world has that selection when it comes to booking a car and having that experience. Trust is the part that we, in my perspective for engineering, is the biggest challenge. How do you build trust outside of design? Design is a way of course, doing behavioral trust. But how
and is that trust of the other person in the transaction in a peer-to-peer marketplace, or trust of the platform, or both? Right.
So I see three entities. There's a guest, there's a host, and of course there's the asset. That's. So we see all these aspects, and all of this is actually us. So the trust in the platform, that
all parties.
So guest wants to make sure, we want to make sure that the guests have, an experience of the right car. The car is safe to drive. The host and guest treat each other well, and the transaction therefore is convenient and it's done well. From our perspective, we want to make sure that the more trusted transactions we have, the lesser it costs us for our business. We have a great transaction, we have a repeat guest. Yeah. Because of that, we have fewer accidents, because the vehicle is safe and the guest is worthy enough to drive that vehicle, and therefore it's good for our business.
So I would imagine every time I hear the word marketplace, I hear in my head cold start, right? And this feels no different. So you have guests who have never used the platform before, hosts, basically there's no data for anybody. So how did you get up and running in a way to create this trust relationship between these different parties?
Great point. When Turo started back in the days, 2009, relay rides, there was very little data available, for us to be empowered in terms of, getting out of that cold start. But over time, I think, in my perspective, 2012, 2013 was when Turo really actually started, growing the marketplace. There were data, there were signals that we collected from the cloud. There was things around, user identity that we could actually pull. For every transaction, you need a driver's license. For the driver's license, you could pull data that gives us signals of trust, right? Similarly,
from where? Where did you get that?
So there are available third-party accessible data provided by credit unions like TransUnion provides data around driving record and whatnot. That was one of our initial signals, basically. Yeah.
I'm going to draw third-party providers over here. Wait, you said
TransUnion.
Right.
TransUnion. The credit.
I'm pretty sure I'm a subscriber to their.
Yeah, we all are, I guess. The whole 300 million population is somewhere there.
All right.
Right. So those initial signals, TransUnion, they were during those days fewer things, like early days. Mm-hmm. Now we have great, data assets in companies like Sift Science. So
is that with an I or a Y?
Sift is an I, S-I-F-T.
I just assume everybody spells everything incorrectly in order
true.
to buy
that's
domain
true.
names.
No, they got that domain.
All right.
So Sift Science.
Wow, that's terrible rating, but okay.
They give us good, meaningful data and signals that can help us model trust.
And that's for the people, not for the
car,
vehicles,
for
right?
the people.
Okay. So hold on.
So this is
I'm going to use all my favorite colors.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Right. Host and.
In case it's not clear, because you would never know this, the company that I was at before CircleCI, we built a marketplace, and we tried to use trust as the model for changing why people were in the marketplace. So I'm super fascinated by this subject.
That's awesome. So for people, we have signals like Sift Science signals and TransUnion. There are a few others that we leverage that all feed into a data science model that we have built internally at Turo that scores a specific transaction. In terms of asset, which is the vehicle, you get access to, which is, you want to use the green maybe?
Go for it.
And you have access to things like through VIN, you have access to details of the car. So
is that all publicly available also?
It is publicly available. We actually leverage VIN to make sure that the cars on our platform is safe. We make API calls to publicly available data that tells us whether there are any recalls open for cars. And if there are recalls, we actually, Yeah. So.
Like your airbag?
Yes, exactly. And if there's a recall, we have automation in place that basically takes the car out of the site and.
Got it.
So these are signals that feed into trust and eventually make. And as a business, this is our most challenging area. As a technology, from the technology perspective as well, this is where I think majority of our complexity and challenges come from. But there are some simple but fun things as well.
Well, I'm actually curious before we move off of this, if you can describe a little bit how you model the trust from a technical perspective. So you're pulling in all of this data, and I assume you have some representation down here, because this is where databases go on this piece of paper, that show maybe the relationship. Is there anything tied to the relationship, or is it the trust of each individual? Like, does this what would that be? Vertex in this graph have its own trust association? Meaning, if I want to book a vehicle, do I know my relationship with that person, or is it just that person in general in the marketplace and sort of their history and then who they are in the world?
Right. So there are two pieces that we look at. Again, no different from any of the marketplaces. There is identity risk. And payment risk. So, oops, my handwriting. So these two pieces are the key. This is what we eventually try to do. First, we make sure that, this individual, identity of this individual is not risky. So we have data models that feed, features from all these third party that eventually, goes into a model. We train our model, and and retrain it so that it gets more and more optimized towards the revenue of our business and the lesser risk of the transaction as well. And then we do payment risk. Payment risk is if we can trust this person, can we trust that a payment will go through from this person or not? Right? So both this has a data model. This we there are a couple things we depend on. We depend on Stripe, which is our payment processor. So we depend on the payment processor, and we also have a bit rudimentary rule-based stuff that goes, behind the scenes too.
So, one more question on this sort of architecturally. You have all of this data streaming in. Let me find another color. I think they're starting to clash with each other, but it's okay. So you have all this data streaming in, right, down into some data store down here, I'll assume. My classic database. And then you're running some, or maybe it's a bunch of flat files, because we all do that in S3 these days, whatever. And then you're processing this. You said you have a model that you run over all the data. What is there a real-time element to that where you have to calculate that at the point that I'm looking at this, or is it because it's sort of well understood data, you can do this sort of on a nightly basis or just be updating as there's new information? That's question number one. Let's just write them down because I'm going to forget. Timing. And then number two is how much of your understanding is coming out of the actual activity within Turo versus all these third parties, that because this came from my question about cold start.
Right.
At some point you have history with these participants. Okay, so I'll call that augmentation. And I said I have two questions, but I have three.
All right.
And I'm going to forget the third right now. I'm going to come back to it. So let's start with the timing question. Yeah.
So from timing perspective, there are a couple databases. I mean, the primary database that we have that runs our real-time system is a traditional OLTP MySQL database. Now, we have a data warehousing platform where we push all of that into Redshift.
Okay.
That's our primary data warehousing platform through Amazon, basically, right? And of course, we're trying things on BigQuery and Google side as well. Though all of the training of the models, where you get these signals, to your question, you have a cold start, you get the signals, but then as you build up this data, how do you use Turo data? And that's where these models come, basically. As we train the models on our offline databases, our models, the scoring of the model improves over time. And so the models are generated, by training them on an offline data. But in real time, when a transaction actually happens, we pass a bunch of features that are pertaining to that specific transaction. And the model scores the transaction in real time. Now the features that we pull are features from, either the database or from other aspects of the request,
Got it.
Maybe the headers, client details, IPs and whatnot. So that's something that so it's a
Got
mix.
it. Got it. I'm going to write down my third question because I remembered it. Oh, I know what it was. And then we can cover the second question, but I knew I was going to forget. Incremental access, which is basically as you get more history on the platform, or if you reach, let's say my credit score is higher than other participants, does that give me access to more capabilities, or is it just represented to other people on the platform for them to decide whether they want to transact?
Yeah. Does your trust score give you access to more or less? Yes, to some extent. We have what we call as very high value vehicles on our platform.
I'm excited about those.
Yeah.
Those are the Lamborghinis.
We use the acronyms VHVB. Those are the Lamborghinis of the world.
Now that I know you have Lamborghinis, I'm excited.
So yes, since the risk of having those cars available on the platform and having them being shared on the platform is high, there are certain things that we do that guards us and the host and the asset from being given that to someone that could be
right.
risky. So yes, with your risk scores, you do get access to certain things more than, but that's a very small segment. We just want to make sure that in general our guests are not risky.
Right.
And then they have access to pretty much everything.
So there's a threshold to get onto the platform or stay on the platform as a guest?
There are thresholds that we manage on our side that basically enables you to book a car. If you're below that threshold, eventually you don't, but we do things that help you to get, past that. We do things like manual reviews and stuff.
Got it.
That could actually give you, create exceptions and have people book cars even with exceptions, basically.
Yeah, I was curious so let's say, I don't own a Lamborghini, let's all be super clear, but if I have a high value vehicle, is the access to that purely algorithmic? Meaning as a guest, I just wouldn't even be shown that vehicle? Or as a host, do I have the opportunity to say, tell me a little more about this guest before I decide that I'm going to allow them to book this?
Yeah, they're both the aspects. If as a guest you're logged in and we know you, and we know that there are certain things that does not meet the criteria for this guest to be able to book this car, you're not shown this car at the search time itself. So you're not shown the car on the top of the funnel itself. But then if you're a true guest, you're not a registered Turo yet, and we don't know enough about you, you do get access to that. There are two ways guests can book cars on our platform. You could request a book where the host decides to choose whether the host is willing to give you the car, and primary reason hosts want that is convenience. They want availability, scheduling and whatnot to be hashed out before. And there's the other way where the host could have put up the car in this with this feature called Instant Book, where if the guest books it and it's for instant book, you just get the car. There's no. So now we do have people on our platform between 21 and 25 years of age, for example, right? People who may not have tons of historical data building up their driving score or whatnot. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a big segment of our business. So we also use the signals that we get outside of the fundamental driving data. That basically helps us,
Wait, somewhere in here. This goes into the trust.
Right.
Age.
Yeah. So we are the only ones out there, who allow people between 21 and 25 to book a car. There are other things. For example, the traditional rental car companies want you to have a credit card, for example. We let instruments like debit card on the platform. If you are between 21 and 25, there's a very high chance that you might just have a debit card. So here's where I think I feel the engineering challenge starts. You got lesser data, but you still want to assess the risk and let the assets be booked by
So I stopped you because I was so excited about trust, but now I want to talk about photos.
Oh yeah.
Because you told me about this before,
right.
And I find this super fascinating. So why don't you just describe a little bit the role, because this was a big surprise to me when we talked before, a little bit about the role of pictures in the whole process.
Right. So separate from a traditional car rental, very different from traditional car rental, we have a different approach for guests to get their vehicles. When they book a trip with us, we expect them to meet the host if they're booking a vehicle that does not have keyless entry and does not have Turo Go, the new product that we launched last year. So they go meet the guest. So there's
I'm going to draw a car while you do this.
Yeah, sure, let's do it. Yeah.
This is going to be amazing. Also, I'm drawing sideways. You can tell that I'm a child of the 80s because I still think cars look like this.
Well, I would have drawn exactly the same, I guess.
Perfect. I don't even know which way this car goes. Now it has an exhaust.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's where,
Perfect.
That's right.
Okay.
There you go. So there's a guest, I'm just going to stick with my circles.
Perfect.
There's a guest, there's a host, and now the new thing in the mix is the cell phone, right? So we let the guest pick up the car from the host, and we want to make sure that when they pick up the car is well documented, that at the end of the trip there is no contention between guest and host on the condition of the car that was picked up and when it was. So we ask guests and hosts to upload as many pictures as they can during the process of what we call as check-in.
Okay.
So the guests come in and we give them, clues on the app that basically are silhouettes. I don't know if I can draw silhouettes here, but that tells you, okay, now take a picture of the front portion of the car or the side of the car or the
Yeah.
And so the guests and the host, when they upload pictures, and for every reservation we get tons and tons of pictures. On an average, we get more than 100,000 pictures uploaded a day, just from our reservations. At this point,
This is your cloud.
Yeah, that's our cloud. So yes, exactly. So that's the interaction
100 per day.
per day. Right. So
That's
now,
per dog. Okay.
So now that's a huge challenge, because you are, as a guest, or Anna as a host, you're there. You want to pick up your car, you want to get this done and move on.
Right.
But you're taking a picture from a 12 megapixel or more camera on your phone, and you want to upload that whole set of pictures.
Right.
And you want to do it in a way where you can still pick up the car pretty quickly.
Is there a resolution constraint on either side?
Great
Meaning
question.
you want it to be small so it uploads quickly, but if it's a few pixels, you can't actually see the.
Yes. So as a guest, we want the uploads to happen quick. We want confirmation that yes, some picture got uploaded. As a host, you can see the pictures. But as Turo, we want to make sure that we upload pictures with the maximum resolution possible.
Yeah.
So that if there is if there is an incident and we want to verify the condition of the car prior to the incident, we could actually zoom in. So for us, we want to make sure that the pictures are uploaded with the maximum resolution that we could.
Okay.
So that poses a challenge.
So you got all these photos coming in, and obviously, at some point later, I assume this is the guest. As the host, I'm over here, and my car comes. I'm not drawing that car again. It comes back, and I want to look at these photos and compare. But is there more that happens with them in that time? Is it just to store them so I can say, look, and I recognize this, or I see this, let's call it a dent. So as an example, on my honeymoon, I backed into a tree and I managed to stand in front of the back bumper so they couldn't see it when I returned it. I wouldn't recommend that, but so that wouldn't happen, right? Oh wait, which is the back bumper? Now there's a big dent in the back bumper, right? So you bring the car back. You can be the guest for now. I'm the host. You bring my car back to me, and I look at it and I say that I don't remember the bumper being folded in half like that. And so I can look at the photos to prove it, but is there something else that's happening? Is that photo being uploaded then of the damage? Is there, when the damage was originally shown, is there something that happens on your side?
So there are two points at which we expect guests and hosts to upload pictures. One is, as I mentioned, check-in. The other is the checkout, where you're returning the vehicle, basically, right?
Yeah.
So there are check-in images, there are checkout images, and that's what gives us the diff, basically. What was the car like before, and what was the car? Now, with images, we try to make that assessment. Moreover, with the pre and post images, we actually try to assess the extent of the damage and also assess what would it cost to fix it. So we do try to make those assessments as well. So therefore the expectation for as a business that we have is that our guests and hosts are motivated to upload all these good quality images, basically.
So as an engineer, you're going to blow my mind if you tell me that you have software that can entirely figure out the cost by looking at these two images. What does that process look like?
So right now it's pretty rudimentary. So let me accept that. It's pretty rudimentary. It's primarily based on humans assessing it. We also work with a third party who basically are market leaders in damage assessments and repairs.
I want to draw a pipeline. Let's do it.
So there's a set of images, which eventually makes it to people, and eventually, goes into this corporate world where there are people who there's a company that actually manages damages. That's how it happens basically. That's pretty much what happens. So now the pre and the post images are pretty much the images that we have that basically tells us, there was an incident and this.
And sorry, I want to go back to the silhouette. So when you show that silhouette and say, take the picture exactly like this, part of the goal, I assume, is so that these two
exactly
line up.
But not everybody actually adhere to that. We don't, we don't force you to give us a match of the picture that exactly fits in the silhouette.
Well, I can't get the check to fit in the box
there you go,
on the check mobile app, so I can understand if people can't do that perfectly.
Right, but I'm almost certain that few years from now, few years not being 5 years, sooner than 5 years, we'll be in a situation where we will be able to intelligently, just using fundamental computer vision, do some of these analysis ourselves, right? And I'm sure as we scale, that's where we got to go, and we have to.
I assume I'm hesitant to use the word massive because I'm going to assume that most people use cars and return them in good shape, but you're building a training set as well here, right, through this history with all of these photos. That's very cool.
So our photos are getting uploaded, the photos are getting tagged, so we know between pre and post, we have the feedback happening right now through Mechanical Turk.
Right.
But as we build our systems, as we scale our business, our investments in automating this is inevitable. No question about it, basically. Right?
So this is an estimation, I think you said, right? So this is probably filtering.
Yes.
We'll call this filtering. Just, is there something here to worry about? That was going to be a terrible spelling. I'm very good at correcting poorly planned spelling. And then this is professionals.
These are professionals, exactly.
And then at this point, this goes to, okay, yes, we expect there's some actual damage here. We believe there's some actual damage, and we're going to send that off to the various insurance, and everything is handled from there. And this is just fed into that.
Right. So we're not in the business of assessments and damage repair. That's completely outsourced from our perspective. So there's no, instead of other than data transfer between us and them, there's not a lot of technology involved yet.
So let's go back to my story. So if I backed the car into the tree, it's the only time it's ever happened to me. I feel it's important to state that. I assume that goes back in wherever our trust model was down here, right? That's a negative one off my trust record to say, well, Rob's seems like a nice guy and his credit's pretty good, but he does back people's cars into trees. Yeah? Okay, I'm glad. Okay.
Our models will catch it automatically, and will actually use your driving history to say, here's a risky driver, and here's where the risky driver is in terms of the threshold. Now, would you have passed the threshold in the first incident or in the 5 incidents? I think the model will tell us the best, because the model is optimized towards host revenue and Turo revenue and, overall growth, basically.
Right. All right. Any other sort of interesting, surprising parts of the flow of connecting drivers or hosts and guests?
Yeah, and lately we have a new way of connecting guests with the cars, right? It is the whole concept of the keyless, right? Where guests can pick up the cars without the host being there. We were
Do I need to draw
all
another
this
car?
time,
Or you can draw a car this time.
Well, it's going to be pretty much the same. There you go, Ron.
We'll compare them with computer vision later.
My wheels are going to be better than yours.
You have a lot of practice. As a CTO of a CI company, I'm not required to draw. That's awesome.
And
don't forget the tailpipe though. Oh, look at that. That's really good. I'm going to revel in that for a second. Okay, so.
Yeah, that's a.
Keyless.
Yeah, none of those kinds of cars are keyless today.
This is my grandfather's 1977 Pontiac.
I was about to exactly say that basically. This is, yeah. So that's pretty much what it is. So anyways, so keyless. So now you got, again, I'll go to my circles, guests.
Yeah.
With their phones.
Yeah.
No host in here. They booked a car. We tell them, hey, you can just go pick up the car. Mm-hmm. And the guest is like, where's the key? Where is, how can I draw the key? Can I draw the key?
You can.
Is that a key? I don't know.
No, I don't know what that is.
That's not a key. That's not a key.
I mean, mine's not going to be any better, but well, I think it's.
That's the
I'm going to do like the skeleton key, like
right.
this thing,
right.
old school,
that's
like.
A key.
Yeah, there you go. Because that's
Even
that Pontiac
that's
did
more
not
like
have that key.
Exactly.
But yeah, okay.
Exactly. You can open
this. This is a keychain.
That's a keychain.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Right. That's a keychain with two keys,
Yep.
For the fan the rear entrance.
Or it's a very dirty martini. But okay, let's move on.
So yeah, so you got a guest, you got the cell phone now, and you got a car, right? Now we want this guest to be able to open up the car with his app, with his or her app, So now that's where I think the challenge is. We want to make it simple. We actually say that you can go pick up the car, unlock with your phone. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens behind the scenes is fascinating in my perspective. With all these connected cars lately, lots of these keys are on the cloud. If you own a Tesla, you know that you can open up, unlock your Tesla with an app. But not all cars have the keys on the lock. So how do you manage to do that? But pretty much every car, I think. All newer gen cars, have a digital way of locking, unlocking. So there's electronics, there's in the car that basically facilitates the unlock of the car.
So even if I have just like a remote key,
even if you have a remote key,
then the thing that understands that signal is controlled by electronics inside the car.
So there are, small OBD ports. Mm-hmm. That give you a ton of access to some of these mechanics through digital access of the car. Basically,
okay. So that's something that's inside the car. You're saying there's a place that you can connect.
You can just plug in if again there are lots of
OBD.
OBD, yeah.
What does that stand for?
Oh, you just caught me by surprise. I just have no idea. I think
I know a lot of acronyms for which I have no idea what the actual words are. That's fine.
I should know this. It's on board something.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Cool. Okay, so that's it's on board as you just described. Okay.
Yeah. So that's like a port that you can plug in a device that goes through an OBD connector, and that gives you access to a bunch of digitally controlled stuff in the car.
Oh, is that the same thing that my shop uses to figure out why the engine light is on and stuff? Okay.
It's the same thing that that gives us what's the condition of the car as well.
Right.
So what we did was and it's not we didn't innovate this. This has been around for quite a while. We actually worked with Continental, one of the companies that builds a device that plugs into that OBD port.
You have your own little device that sits in the car? That
sits in the car, plugged into the OBD port, and this device has a data chip on it.
Like LTE or
yes, LTE. That basically allows access to information and control in the car through the cloud.
All of my icons are from the 70s and 80s.
That's a good cell tower, by the way.
Yeah, there's all these cell towers that they try to make look like trees and stuff.
Yeah.
I want to try to draw one of those, but we'll be here all day. So we'll just
go back to making it look like cell towers, isn't it?
Yeah. Whoop, whoop. There we go. Now it looks like a tower.
Right, there you go.
Okay. It wouldn't be wireless if there was this big cable there, but you get the idea.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, now with that we get the capability to talk to the car through cloud. We have therefore we have access to the car, and then of course we got the cell phone, and so we have the cell phone, we have data connectivity, mm-hmm. And we know what commands that could be issued to that device connected to the OBD port that can do certain things on the car, like lock and unlock. Now, that the call that we make, which is it's just a REST API at the end of the day,
from here to here?
Now, there are many ways that happens. So we could actually, if everything is connected on data, we could do this, and it could come back and, so there could be...
Right, a full, Right.
But what we actually do is we don't, depend on the cloud and the connectivity for the customer to be able to unlock the car. Right. So for that, there's a BLE chip on this device.
Oh, right in here as well?
Yeah, so a lightweight, a Bluetooth connector.
We'll call it near field-ish.
Yeah.
Bluetooth. I'm not going to try to draw the Bluetooth. Oh wait, I think I just did.
Isn't that you did. That's exactly that's what.
Perfect.
Yeah. So through Bluetooth, we connect the app and issue commands.
This direct pathway.
Exactly. So we use the Bluetooth pathway to issue commands that locks and unlocks the car, and that basically is for us so that we don't depend on cloud. But there is something in the app, there's a key in the app that we got to have available on the app so that those keys can be passed through this connection and say, okay, here's a key I have, here's a digital key, open the car or unlock the car with that key. So
does that have to get passed to both parties out of your...
No, yes, exactly. So we create a key for a trip, which is unique for a trip, and then...
I want to draw another key.
And the key is pushed on both the sides, basically. Right?
So somewhere here,
yes,
right, and somewhere up within the cloud at Turo, you have a key generation, and then that's going. I feel like I need another color. That's going out both ways, over to the phone, and then down through this crazy scheme.
Yeah.
To the device in the car?
Right. The latter part need not happen. The device itself can, through interpretation of the keys, can understand, here's a key for me.
Okay.
Therefore, here's a command for me, basically.
Oh, got it.
It's fingerprinted, basically.
Yeah.
Right? So the key is here. So we definitely have to download the key onto the app. At the right time. Now, that's another challenge. When is that right time?
I see.
You don't want to download the key and activate the key soon enough.
Too
you
early.
Also want to do it. So that's an area that we continue to optimize. Like guests could come in early, could come in late. They would want to not check in and directly have access to the car. So we build flow so that directs the guest towards us enabling them to get the keys and activate the keys at the right time. So, but we don't depend on data. And therefore, through BLE, we make the lock unlock.
Right. Got it. So were there any? I've worked a tiny bit on embedded systems, and it's like a whole other world of surprises. I love the cloud and continuous deployment, unsurprisingly, and I'm happy to be back in this world because once you have a device in the field, it's very difficult to make changes. Right?
Exactly.
So are there sort of been any interesting learnings or surprises about this particular piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, many. When we built this, as any other software development lifecycle, we thought we knew all the corner cases that we were going to build this for, right? But obviously, there were many that were complete surprises. So as I mentioned, the keys need to get downloaded to the app. Well, what if the guest books the car, on the web, and then just assumes that I'm going to go show up in that parking garage, third floor under the basement, and pick up the car.
Get it, yeah.
Right. So we don't have the keys on the device. How do you deal with that? Basically, there have been situations like this. The guests could have actually, have the keys on the mobile device, but may not have been activated because, at the time we downloaded the key and the reservation time, there would have been a gap, and between when the guest is coming to pick up the car, we may not have data, and therefore we may not have activated the key.
Right.
So those were some of the things that has happened with us, where guests were, in a parking garage, trying to call us, there's no connection, therefore the call is difficult. So they go out of the parking garage, call us, say, hey, I can't unlock. And then we say, okay, now go back and try, and assuming that since they're in a data network.
Right, that they'll be fine now.
So those are some of the things that, we continue to look at and we continue to improve. That's what we're working on.
Well, yeah, as I said, I'm very happy to be up in this world for the most part for us.
Device world is challenging, though, we did announce a partnership with Smart Car.
Okay.
Smart Car enables all the connected cars that are connected on the cloud today, access to them through,
I'm gonna draw a smart car just to keep going.
Yeah. So now they provide access to connected cars over the cloud. To simply put, basically, they provide a uniform interface that allows us to connect to various cars, various OEMs underneath. So now we're talking about the next generation where we may not need this device in the car. If you have a newer car.
Oh, so this now has a built-in.
Yeah. If you
and
have
you were saying that about Tesla.
Yeah. So
as
Tesla,
well. So there's providers that have.
Now the newer cars, I think 2017 and beyond. Quite a few actually, low-end cars now are connected on the cloud, and that's where we see the world going. We see a lot more cars connected. We see all of the cars connected eventually.
Yeah.
And therefore, there's no need for any hardware and I can't wait to see that happen. Basically.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I feel like you're bridging this gap with some very cool, interesting approaches to something that eventually goes away. It's always an interesting problem as an engineering leader.
Exactly.
Like, how much do we invest in solving a problem that we believe will not be here? I will tell you, especially here in California, I grew up in Toronto, so there's salt on roads and cars last like 3 years and then they fall apart. But in California, you'll see 30, 40-year-old cars driving around the streets. So
I got 200,000 miles on my SUV and it's still working well.
Right, exactly. So this whole everyone is going to be post 2017 with their car. I think you'll still have work to do in this space.
So as I said, we want to be able to give access to any car a guest wants, anywhere there is. So I don't see us moving away from that.
So you mentioned earlier the access to vehicles for the 21 to 25-year-old segment and sort of having the ability to get a car that you want, where you want, in groups of people who haven't necessarily been able to do that. What intrigues me is, on the other side, the notion of what this changes for the host. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Yeah.
I think another big area that we see changing with our platform is the whole notion of car ownership. I feel that we made car more affordable to people who are not necessarily who could not necessarily afford cars. So what we do is basically help individuals who are in the market to buy a car to get an assessment of what would it take for them to buy a car if they had shared this car on Turo for a few days.
I see.
So if you think about it, so we give them again a calculator. I don't know if this is, and
that's also from my childhood. I like that.
Yeah, and they have their calendars. So based on the calendar based on the days that they would like to share the cars on the platform, we give them a way to look at what would this car, give you back in terms of earnings, and we built a tool called Calculator.
Nice.
So this enables, hosts to buy cars that they desire, and figure out, if they share it on Turo, what kind of earnings would they get?
Got it.
So let's say, someone's in the market to buy a Model 3. Model 3 is popular. It's one of the top 5 cars that are booked on Turo. And you want to buy a Model 3.
I'm not even going to try to draw a Model 3, but I'm going to write it here.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about it.
Yeah. So, I was thinking what was the logo for Tesla. Maybe I should, and then forget about it.
Okay,
so
so
Model 3.
Really badly.
Yeah. So Model 3. Traditionally, I think I don't know the specifics, but if you go buy a Model 3, it costs you maybe $1,000 a month, and what we help figure out is what would happen if you put Model 3 in a certain market. Let's say if you have Model 3 in San Francisco, and if you put it on Turo, what's the max, what's the min and max that you can make out of Model 3 basically?
Okay.
This is based on how many days you want Model 3 to be shared, and for a few days in a month, 6 to 8 days, we could actually the host could actually make enough money back off the $1,000 that this car all of a sudden becomes very affordable. They could make upwards of $500 a month, with the right utilization, the right market, and that gives them now access to a car, an ownership to a car that they were not able to afford.
So I commute on weekdays, for example, right? Let's assume that this was Sunday over here. This is Saturday. So these days I need my car. Ooh, that's really terrible. But over here,
you don't.
I don't, so I can put it on
Exactly,
Turo and then I've got however many weeks in the month,
so
full weekend.
So what we do, we also, for the convenience of the host, they could just let people book on the weekends, or they could let people book, anytime they want. If they're vacation, they could have, the whole month if they wanted to be, they want the car to be on the platform basically.
Oh, of course. So if I go away,
you could go away.
I've got that opportunity to maybe even cover my whole 1,000 for that month, right?
If you wanted to,
Oh, that's very cool.
With durations, you could say, I could share my car for 15 days at a time, or a month, or there's no limit. You can take the car,
And so you mentioned the area and the car type. So one of the things that comes to mind when I think about that is the demand, right? So are you using the historical data to say we expect your sort of statistical odds of being able to make this number versus, if it's available for all these days, we're going to assume that someone wanted on all those days, which is probably not true for all cars.
Right. So primarily that's exactly what we do. We look at our historical data. We built a data science model that basically says, based on demand, based on the market area, and based on the specific your make and model. Here's what the utilization could be like, and therefore here's what
this is an estimate basically. So, and this is on your site, I assume.
So Turo.com/calculator gets you there basically.
Is there? You talked about the historical data feeding into the model. We sort of drew that earlier for something totally different. Is it similar? Is there anything kind of interesting?
Pretty similar. And here what we're doing is we're looking at demand. We're looking at demand. We're looking at utilization. We're looking at demand and utilization for a market area. So the mechanics is similar. The optimization is different basically.
So now that we're talking about demand for a second, again, marketplaces, always fascinating. I've got, or you've got, right, a pool of folks over here who are potential guests, right? And then all the assets, let's assume. I'll just call them cars. It's easier. And then over here, a pool of, actually this is probably less important right now, but the pool of hosts, right? So more people are coming in, I assume all the time, joining Turo and sharing in this marketplace, and the makeup of this pool of cars is changing, the models and stuff. So is there there are no Model 3s right now, but people who like Model 3s also really like this car sort of thing. Like how do you guide people, and do you need to do that a little bit just to keep the dynamics of the marketplace healthy?
Right. So there are two aspects to your question in my perspective. One is how do you predict demand and therefore work on the supply. Like if you
balance by supply.
Years where your demand is going to be, you build your supply towards the demand basically, right?
This is my demand prediction. Up and to the right.
And that is the most challenging problem for any marketplace. How accurately could you do demand supply match? And nothing different. We deal with the same problem. And then there's the second aspect, which is personalization, where how do you bridge the gap between demand and supply through personalization? Where you say, as you mentioned, you're in the market for a Model 3, but it's a very highly likely chance that you might book, a BMW i3. I don't know, if that's a comparison, but so personalization is an aspect that we haven't really done much at Turo yet, but we know that that's where that's where we're going basically. So we know that this is the area of work for us.
Right.
But so far, we've done very basic personalization, where based on what you saw recently, what you visited recently, we push little pokes to you to come back and
Are there different in your mind, whether it's shown in the platform or not, are there different sort of personalities of people who are getting access to a car? Like,
great.
When I have the opportunity to use a different car, often try to get something very different from what I drive normally, as opposed to some people who might be like, this is the car that I drive and I want to have that exact car no matter where I am.
Right. Again, boils down to the same question of personalization. How well do we capture what you like as a customer? How well can we match our supply to what you like, and recommend you, things that could meet your criteria. Again, Turo right now, we are barely scratching the surface in that area.
Yeah.
That's an area that we will be working on, and it's inevitable. And that's one of the fundamental pillars of
like our previous comments. You're building the data set, regardless of whether you've used it. Right.
Exactly.
You know all of these people, what their preferences are, what their schedules look like. So you have everything, and now you can pull that together.
Agreed.
Cool. Very cool. Well, this is all super fascinating. I've greatly enjoyed our vehicle drawing contest, and you won hands down, so I feel good about that. I really appreciate you coming by. This was super interesting. Tons of surprises in what feels like a very, like you can imagine the flow, but when you get into the details, like all software and all technology, there are interesting little bits that you wouldn't have predicted, and you've clearly done a lot of deep thinking about how to solve those. So thanks for coming by, taking the time, and sharing this all with me today.
Thank you, Rob. It was an honor. It was a pleasure. I had a great time, and I had some fun drawing sessions as well.
Thank you. So thanks for joining us here on Drawn Out Conversations, and we'll see you next time.